Good evening, everyone. Hi. Thanks so much for your patience as we waited through a small little technical glitch we had. So we really appreciate you hanging around and joining us this evening. My name's Amy Radoshansky, and I am the Vice President at College Living Experience. And it's my pleasure to be with you this evening as we're going to talk a little bit about parents and their experience in transition planning. So just a little background on me. I am the Vice President. I'm a special educator, and I have been in special ed for more than 10 years. I've been working with CLE since 2007, and just prior to that, I had the chance to work at a non-public school in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was there that I got the chance to see what it looked like to transition students into adult life. And when I had the chance to transition to work at someplace like CLE, I jumped on it because it was such a unique way of looking at post-secondary supports and planning, and just such a unique, rigorous environment for students to learn in. And so I was thrilled at the chance to be a part of something like that. So I'm here now. I help in overseeing the programming at our 6 centers and work to constantly evolve and grow our programming to meet really the ever-changing needs of our students. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm here tonight with Dr. Jeff Crow, and he is one of my colleagues at CLE Denver. So I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody who's attending this or who may watch this in the future. I'm really happy to be able to talk with you all tonight. Like Amy was saying, my name is Jeff Crow. I'm the Director of Psychological Services at CLE in Denver. And I've been in this position since August. I am a recent graduate of the University of Denver with my PsyD in clinical psychology. So my background is all psychology and therapy related, and this is such an awesome opportunity, and I'm really glad to be a part of CLE. I was here for 2 years in the past, left and finished my degree and couldn't totally leave. I came back as soon as I could. I love working with our students, and I love just the family environment, I think, and the passion of all of our staff and the management team. So thank you, Amy. It's really good to be back a part of this with you guys.
Yeah. Well, just for those of you who aren't familiar with College Living Experience, we are a post-secondary support program, and we support students as they're making that transition from their high school experience into the college world, to college life. And our supports are wraparound programming that supports students as they're pursuing a degree at a community college, a university, a program, whatever their specific path is. And we provide the coaching and instruction for them across the areas of their academic programming, living supports in an apartment near the campus that they're attending and near our facilities, and social development coaching, so they have a peer group that they get to really build relationships with, and then ultimately also career development support so that they can transfer the skills that they've learned from their certificate or degree that they've earned and into the work environment, because that's ultimately the goal of so many of our students, is to find really meaningful employment in an area that is passionate to them. And so our supports are really across all of those environments, and we have them occurring in the natural setting. So our instruction might be in the community, in their apartment, on campus, or at our center, so that they can really get the most out of that instruction and have the best opportunity to generalize their skills and apply them in the real-world setting. So we are celebrating our 25th year, actually, and we serve students across 6 centers and more than 200 students per year. So it's a really unique setting, and we're proud that we always are looking towards the individual path of students and trying to really meet them where they are and align our services with their goals. So one of the things that I've always noticed in working at CLE, so many of the parents haven't quite planned for their own transition of what it's going to be like to have their son or daughter leave their home. And for some parents, that's their last son or daughter, or maybe their only, or maybe it's the first, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate not having their son or daughter with them every single day and experience something so new and different. So approached me and said that he'd really like to help better support parents plan for their own transition, not just their son or daughters. And I thought this was just an awesome topic to consider. And so I'm really excited to turn it over to him and let him walk you through what your transition planning should look like as you're preparing your son or daughter.
Hey, thank you very much. And so I spend a lot of my time talking to you all and talking to parents, and I was overwhelmed, I think, starting about sort of the depth of conversation I was having with parents and the stress that you all were going through and the fear and the excitement and this huge opportunity and just this huge transition. And I think we tend to talk all the time about the transition the students are going through, and we ease them through it, and we have meetings among our staff every week about how to make this the smoothest, nicest transition for our students possible. And I think I want to be proactive in trying to learn what this must be like for all of you, and I hope that this can be kind of the beginning of an ongoing conversation as I learn more. You know, I realize the irony of sitting here telling you all about yourselves when you are the experts on you, and so I hope that you can all let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, and we can get even a better understanding of what it's like as we go through it. I know, I think I gained some credibility because I was walking in to do our parent orientation with our new parents this year, and I was preparing this whole discussion about what it must be like to drop your student off at college and say goodbye and call maybe in a week, but trust that somebody else can take care of your student. And I was trying to imagine what that was like, and ironically that week I dropped my 1-year-old son off for the first time at daycare and put all this trust in a stranger to know exactly what he needed at all times and to do the right things and to call me if I needed to be involved. And it wasn't hypothetical anymore. It wasn't practice, and I get a sense of what that must be like to put your trust in somebody else to take care of this child that you've been taking care of your whole lives. I also, as I jump into this, I got a good laugh from several of our students today when I told them I was going to get online today and tell their parents all about themselves and about how to be a parent, and I was going to do it all in about half an hour. And I got a lot of laughs, and they said, "Good luck. I've been trying to do that for years. Let's see how you do." So we'll see how I do. So I'm going to jump a little bit in and out of a PowerPoint that I've put together, and then I'm going to take you through a couple activities that I do sometimes as clinical interventions, and at the end, I hope we'll have some time to answer some questions. I think Amy's also sort of fielding questions, so if you have something that comes up as we go along, send that over to Amy, and she'll get that through to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'm going to jump in to this. I call this Rediscovering Jane, and Jane's the name I gave to the parent in my mind that I envision, who could be one of our parents, could be a current parent, could be a potential parent, could be somebody that's never going to be associated with CLE, but is going through this experience of saying goodbye to a child from their everyday lives, whether it be a child with some special needs or it's a neurotypical child. I'm hoping this can apply to a lot of people, but I'm calling you all Jane for the moment. And this is exactly what it looks like, right? It's perfect and happy, and you give your child a big hug and tell each other how much you love each other, and it's perfect from there.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes?
Just to interrupt, can you click on the screen share? I'm not sure I can see your screen quite yet.
Yes.
Thanks.
Is that coming through?
Not yet. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Usually I need our students to teach me about technology, so I'm on my own right now.
They're good at it. They're really good at it.
And this is the big piece of what I want to talk about, is that I've learned, in speaking about all parents, I think, to begin with, there's a huge shift that happens as you become a parent that I've learned myself and that you all know well, far too well, is that you're not yourself anymore. You're your child's parent. And it's fascinating, even when I meet some of the parents of our students at orientations and things like that, and they'll introduce themselves as John's mom or as Matthew's mom, things like that, and less often by their first name. And I think that's partly a product of the uniqueness of that interaction, but I think that's also symbolic. How a lot of people have put it to me is that you're making a choice to give up your identity and not have your life be about yourself anymore. It's about somebody else. And I think so much of your energy, time, creativity, and passion becomes centered on your child and where your child's life is going. What's their next day going to be like? What are their activities? What are they doing the coming weekend? And there's really room to ask what you're doing yourself. And I think this is the part that I'm coming to understand, is just how much is involved in raising a child with some exceptional needs. I'm dancing around. I'm hesitating to say a disability or special needs because I think I hate to pigeonhole our population, especially the students here. There's such a wide variety. But I think, for all, there's the experience of a parent of a neurotypical child, and then this additional experience. I think that part of what it is that everybody, so you have your identity as yourself, and then I think when you become a parent, a lot of us have this image in our minds of the parent that we're going to be. And maybe it looks like from the Hallmark movie, or it looks like the way we saw our parents if we had good parents, or the way we saw other parents that we interacted with. And we thought it was, you envision it as this magical experience, and you're going to be the greatest parent that you can be. And you're going to have the greatest child that you could ever have. And I think that the children that we work with are really, really difficult. And I think there's a little bit of giving up not only yourself, which you've agreed to do, but also that image of this parenthood and this family that you're going to have, and this relationship with your child, because the relationships with your children are amazing and so meaningful, but they don't look exactly maybe like we planned them to. It crossed my mind, how would a student react to hearing this? And I think it's important for me to say that it's not their fault. It's not your fault. Part of what it is a student's supposed to come in and change your identity and change your relationship. But I think that I'd be remiss without acknowledging that it's a little bit of a different experience that some of you go through. And so when I started doing research, I became fascinated talking to so many of our parents on the phone and hearing so much anxiety and things like that about their child being with us, that I think I started to become interested in what happens to our parents in raising this child. And I started looking at some research, and it kept calling it a traumatic experience, and saying that this raising your child and having your child diagnosed with something really serious is a stress event, and it changes everything in your life. And the natural thing that people do in response is to try to create meaning out of that experience. Try to figure out why this has happened in their life, and try to figure out why this happened to their child, and try to figure out how they can use this going forward. And I think what happens is that parents try to create meaning about what they can make of this. And a lot of times it's taking on a different role as a parent, and it's becoming sort of saying, I was given this because I can handle it, and it's my job it's now my destiny in life to take care of this child and to give them the best life possible. It's not about me anymore. That was the lesson to be learned from this experience. Or I am now a crusader, and it's up to me to fight everybody in my child's way of success and fight for him or her at every turn because they're not being given some of the things, some of the services or opportunities or things like that. So my job is the protector and the creator of this child. And I think that helps parents. It helps explain what happened and how they need to respond. And I think it gives a purpose and it gives a meaning. What it gives is a new identity, even as I say those names, the crusader, the provider, the protector. Those are identities in themselves. And I think Jane, that individual, gets even more lost in the process. And I think another part of just how confusing it is that I don't think parenthood follows any of the books for most of our parents. I think, some of your child, I've read enough of those baby month by month kind of books that, your child at 3 months should be doing this, maybe doing this. What happens when your toddler does these things, your child, your teenager does all these things? I think most of our students aren't doing those things at the typical milestone points or in the typical order. And so a lot of parents of neurotypical children, I think, have a lot of people to rely on and ask for advice. They might ask their mother or father how they did it, or friends, or people they know that have been down a similar path. And I think a lot of our parents are stuck trying to figure it out on their own. A lot of the advice they receive doesn't apply and may even be insulting. And it can really develop a feeling of, I think, you against the world, that nobody else understands it. It's only you. Your responsibilities are through the roof, and sort of it's you and your child in this mix together. Now I want to illustrate a little bit. So just when I try to figure out it's a great question. It's sort of the who are you question, and I'll click back to myself. So I feel like I ask this all the time in clinical sessions with students, in our focus groups here. It'll ultimately come to the question of who are you? And that's what I'm talking about in this presentation. I guess I'm asking you all, who are you? Who were you before your child? Who are you with your child? And who are you now? And I get the most amazing blank looks when I ask people that question, and they have no idea where to start. And so I think I do a number of different exercises where, we've done things with our students where we'll have them make a collage of things that speak to them, and we'll start to look for themes and patterns and say, okay, this is what you're communicating of who you see yourself to be. We'll get a mirror and have people draw themselves and decorate the picture and talk about the choices that you made and what you drew and what you emphasized, and maybe this is something that's really important to you. The thing I'll share with you all now, so I went around as a test case to ask our staff members, I asked them to give me one word to describe themselves. And I plugged it into a website that'll give us a little image of those things, and I'll flash that up to you right now. But this is what we got. Can we all see this?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks, Jeff.
Cool. And so this was one word given to me, and my staff loved this, by the way. They thought I was nuts for asking them to describe themselves in one word. This was the mix I've gotten. And I think it's really interesting to look at them and think how many of these would still be true as you're devoting your entire day's worth of energy and patience and compassion to a high needs child. So, like, there's sarcasm I hope would persist. Some of the happy, positive, energetic. It's hard to remain energetic when you're devoting everything you have to somebody who needs 100% from you. It's hard to remain positive in the face of so many setbacks and so many challenges and things that you didn't account for. it's hard to be to remain flexible working with specifically our population of students who are so rigid, and can be very demanding. I think it's telling that the one staff member we have who is the parent of a high needs child is the one that wrote Feisty. Um, and I think that's definitely an identity that people can adopt. So I think another thing that happens going through this transition. So I think you lose a lot of yourself, and part of it's intentional because you're making a conscious choice to devote yourself to this child. But I think a part of it is probably accidental or not realized, not recognized as well. And a big part of that is I think how much of you lose out of your social circle, the other people in your life. And I'm making generalizations. It's not the same experience for everybody, but I think there's so many reasons why people can get cut out of your life. I think, time demands and schedule demands, and in addition to what any child may be taking up, I think, different specialists or consultants or, I've meeting with our students, I've heard of school personnel that I didn't even know existed, who have assisted our students in other, in various areas. That I think there's literally not a lot of time for people. So some of those more peripheral relationships probably get cut out. I think there's also a tendency to hide yourself from other people. That I think there's a fear of stigma. It can be difficult to take your child places, to people's houses or to public events, and worry about the stigma of what people might say, what they might think. I think that there are things that happen that rupture relationships. I know even for myself, it gets as a parent, it gets tougher to talk to people who are not parents because there's so much that's difficult to explain. And I think I imagine that it must be even harder to interact with people who think they know what you're going through, which is, I guess, me right now, or people who try to give you advice, people who don't understand your child and take something that they did the wrong way and maybe give a judgment because of it. And it seems like these ruptures happen, and it gets harder and harder to keep a good number of relationships. And I'm going to try to illustrate this for you.
Hey, so Jeff.
Yes.
Could you just click one more time over to your PowerPoint for us so that we can try to see exactly the diagram that you're going to get to show us?
Gotcha.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
No problem. So I think I'm going to try to illustrate this for you. This is another activity that I do with our students when we talk about the people in your life. And I'm going to walk through it. So it's these. So I click over.
Perfect. Thanks.
So we look at social circles. So we ask people to draw a series of circles. So the first one to just write your name, and I have a diagram of this that I hope it'll make sense when I show it to you. So you have it looks kind of like a bullseye, and you have your name in the middle. It looks like this. In the second circle, you're supposed to put people who are very close to you, who you interact with on a daily basis, a huge part of your life. So here I put spouse and children in here. That could be partner, that could be your parent that you're living with, anybody in your home that you're seeing all the time. I think in this next circle, we say to put people that you have an ongoing relationship with. So a couple I added in here, your parents, coworkers that you see quite often, good friends that you consistently make plans with, maybe a church or another activity or community group that you belong to. And then in the farthest outside circle where you get people who are acquaintances, extended family that you see every once in a while, but don't have a close personal relationship with. And so this is ideal, the one that I've sketched out here, I think. I think a lot happens when you go through the experience that you all are going through as parents. Just like I was saying, the demands on your time and your energy, I think most of this outside circle drops out, extended family, acquaintances. I wrote in here therapists because I'm a little partial to therapists, but I think sort of representing this time for yourself to think and figure things out, I think really gets dropped immediately. I think some of the other relationships sort of go from the next inner circle to that outside circle. Good friends becomes maybe one or two good friends. Maybe you don't have time to go to meet with groups as often, don't have as many chances to call parents or friends, maybe don't have time to see a coworker after work gets out. And I think that even children and spouse living in your own home, I think, can be broken up a little bit, where I think it becomes your child who has high needs and the rest of your family, and I think they can get those relationships can become a little bit different. And this is how I imagine it can become to look. So that I put IP, which I'm using to stand for your child that's taking up the majority of your time, where I think they can occupy that whole inner circle's worth of time and energy that might be devoted to your entire family. And so family starts to become more like close friends start to become more like acquaintances, and acquaintances kind of drop off the chart. And I think that the thing that can happen even from there is that child, sort of when I look at it, it becomes that feeling of the two of you against the world, almost in this together. And there's nobody else in that inner circle that quite understands what it's like to be the two of you. And those identities can even mesh. And I think what can even happen is you can almost have Jane and the name of your child in that middle circle, and it's almost like you become one person. And this is the moment that I meet you guys. So I meet you all when you drop your student off, and when you've had to decrease these social circles, and it's become just the two of you and only these other people on the periphery of your life, and then we come and take this child away from you. And I'm trying to imagine what that experience is like, where we go to the two of you against the world to you. And we go from one person or two people in those inner circles to nobody. And I've heard that experience of parents dropping their child off and coming home. And one of our parents recently told me they got home after dropping their child off and introduced themselves to their husband. I had another parent who told me that they got home and all this construction had been done on their house, and it looked different, and they had no idea when it started or what had been changed exactly, what was new and what had been there before, because it had been going on around them, but they had no time to even stop and look around and notice. And I love that as a metaphor. And so this is a passage about letting go. And this next section, I'm going to talk about that absence of that child from your life, not from your life, but from your everyday life, and how excruciating that can be. And I love this passage. It's from an excellent blog. It's goodtherapy.org. It's a blog put together by Beverly Ansell, who's a PhD in clinical psychology, and she writes a lot about parents separating from children and some of the effects that can have. And the biggest thing that I take from this is that you want to jump in and protect your children, and that's normal. Um, it's totally understandable. Nobody wants to see their child go through difficult things. Nobody wants to see their child stressed out and wondering if they can get through class or not, and being afraid to meet new people, and moving to a new city that they don't understand, and getting lost and getting scared, and they're calling home, and there's such a desire for parents to come in and swoop up their children into their arms and tell them that everything's going to be okay. And I find it so hard that a lot of times I'm telling parents not to do that, but not wanting to villainize it at the same time, because it makes so much sense. We all want to take good care of our children. We all want to prevent suffering, and we all want them to be as happy as possible. And so it's so hard not to step in and do that. And so I think that's, when I was highlighting that moment in your lives where I meet you, where your kids are leaving, I think that's the natural instinct. So you have this space to account for and to make up for all this space that this child was taking up in your life. And I think it's daunting, it's unnerving to have all this time and all this space and all of your mental energy to put towards something, and you don't know what to put it towards. And so I think there's a tendency to reach out and try to grab your child and bring them back. And saying, this is the person I feel I'm used to doing this with. This is how I feel confident and successful and as a good person, a good parent, is by doing this for my child. And so let me bring them back and continue doing it. So many of the conversations I have with parents are asking them if I can take that over for them. Where I'm saying, this is a time when I can step in and do this now for you and the rest of our staff, that we can take care of your child. We can support them emotionally and set things up for them in terms of logistics and day-to-day. And so many of the calls I have are debating, people are really afraid that we won't do it right. And we don't know the students as well as you know them, and so we don't do it the same, and it's really hard to trust. And I think as we're looking at it professionally, what we're wanting to do is create independent students, and so we're allowing students to fall a little bit and experience some discomfort, and that's so hard for parents to watch, because that's the last thing that you want. And I think so many of the conversations I have are where parents are asking me, step in, do something, and I'm saying, I'm not doing anything, but it's on purpose, and we're not going to let them fall too far. And so I think what I'm really trying to do is understand that moment from the other perspective. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in that moment. And so it's actually some of your greatest dreams coming true, believe it or not, that your students are doing developmentally appropriate stuff. They're separating and individuating, which means they're not telling their parents as much. They're not calling them every day. They're not calling them when they normally have when they were younger. They're not telling them some of the things that they told them when they were younger. And this is hard for parents, I think, to not be getting the information that you used to be getting, and it's easy to assume that things are terrible, or that something's going wrong. And I think that this is normal, so that a certain amount of that separation and that worry about how your child's doing on their own is totally normal. I think there's also a separation anxiety that parents can go through, and this is when you're thinking about your child nonstop, and you can't sleep, and you can't eat, and I think parents go through versions of that where almost like it consumes your life. What is my child doing? Are they okay? Is something going wrong? Should I go down and get them? Can I help? What can I do? Um, and I think that there are two parts of what's going on there. And both are totally normal. That the part of it is to worry about your child and are they okay? And I think the unspoken part is to worry about yourself and am I okay? And this relationship, this attachment to my child means so much to me. Am I okay without it? And so we talk about individuation, and that means sort of when parent and child, we use it all the time to talk about a child and their process. So it's when parent and child go from seeing themselves as a joint, sort of one collective person, and split into two people. And we talk about the process of the child of sort of finding yourself, some of those cliches you hear, discovering your purpose, learning who you are as a person, some of those things. It's sort of that idea of I'm not my mother, I'm not my father, I'm my own person. I still have things in common with them and I have a relationship, but there's some things about me that are just me. And I think a big part of that, and so just to jump back, so the part I'm realizing is that parents are doing that too, but nobody's talking about it, and so it goes unnoticed, I think. And so you may be having a lot of anxiety about that process that's simultaneously going on for you, and you don't know what it is. And I think I'm hoping to put a name to it by saying that. And so I think for parents, I think it's hard with your children to. It's always this cost benefit analysis of letting them do things on their own and make their own mistakes and experience things even if they don't work out, even if you know better. It's sort of wanting them to learn that they can get through difficult things and soothe themselves and create solutions to their problems. And once they're able to do those things on their own, then we don't have to worry about them as much because we know they can get to take care of themselves. Till they do, though, we worry that won't happen. And I think it's always this cost-benefit analysis of how can they experience discomfort without being traumatized? How can they scrape their knee without breaking their leg? Experience a little bit of negative feeling without hurting themselves so much. And so I think what I ask parents a lot to do in terms of their child's individuation is to communicate trust in their children, communicate that belief that you're a capable person, and you're going to do a good job. You're going to figure this out. You're going to come up with solutions, and I believe in you. And I think that inspires that feeling in their kids to believe in themselves. And I think these are what holds us back from doing that, is can they do that without me? And sort of this secret anxiety that I was talking about of, oh, what if they do? What if they can figure this out on their own? What if they don't need me? And then that identity that we were talking about, that protector, crusader, provider, what happens to that? So who am I going to be if I'm not constantly a parent to my child? And what I want to look at is the opportunity. And so if we look at children individuating from their parents, we also have parents individuating from their children. And so where this fusion happened, where you became almost like one person, as I was trying to illustrate in those social circles, you have split back into two people. And this is an amazing opportunity to do all those same things that we were talking about with our children, to figure out who you want to be, to experiment, try new things, decide what part of you is your child, and what part of you is just you on your own. I think that there's an opportunity to ask yourself what's been missing, for a long time, or what you'd like to add that may have seemed like a ridiculous question before. Asking a younger child who's completely confused with their parents, what do you want to be when you grow up, seems silly because they don't have the the resources to really decide and do that. And I think it can feel the same way being a parent in the midst of it with your children as they're growing up, that if I ask you, what do you want to be yourself? What do you want to be when you grow up? It feels like, why are you asking me that? I don't have time to think about it, and I certainly don't have time to do it. And I think that there's this sort of amazing time when you drop your child off at college or at their, whatever they're going to do with their adult lives, that you can actually ask that question and have time to think about the answers. Okay, now I get to individuate. Who do I want to be? And I think one of the benefits of this is that the attachment with your child changes, the relationship changes, but I don't know that it gets worse. One of my favorite things is when I see some of our students that have been with us for a couple of years, and they're so excited for their parents to come in and visit. Whereas, the first year parents come in and visit and they're maybe annoyed or don't want to spend that time, want to do their own thing. They get really excited again later on, and one of the things they love is that one of our students just talked to me about how cool it was that her mother came in and she got to host her mother, that she got to take her around her city and show her her apartment, and her mother could be her guest. And she said, it's been the other way around for so long. It's so much fun for me. It changes the conversations we can have where we're both adults and I have my life to show her, and I'm excited for her to show me her life. And we developed this whole new type of attachment. I had another student that I met with who just told me how he was so used to going home and talking with his mother, and every conversation would be about whether he passed his class or whether he was keeping his apartment clean, or whether he was making friends. And as he was coming as he was growing up and he was coming toward the end of our program, he's talking about how much fun it was going to be to go home and see his mom and just get to laugh and talk and have conversation and ask her how she was and have her ask him how he is, and that have their relationship be more about fun and love, and not whether he was doing the things he was supposed to be doing or not. And so we're coming toward the end here. As I looked at some research, and it highlighted some of these things that are basic human needs. So we look at, food, water, shelter, things like that as basic human needs. But a lot of the research categorizes some of these basic human emotional needs as well, and talks about how essential they are, how they're not second-level needs, but they're primary needs as a human being, for emotional connection, recognition, warmth, empathy, appreciation, love, and friendship. And I think that parents of our students can put those aside. It's a thankless job being a parent, especially raising our students, and you don't get a lot of day-to-day recognition. You don't get a lot of empathy from people who don't quite understand what you're going through. You may not get a lot of appreciation and friendship from your child every day. And I think we tend to pretend those needs aren't there if there's no chance of them being met anyway. So we just block them out. We don't think about them. We learn to do it for ourselves so that we don't have to rely on other people to do it and ultimately be disappointed. And we try not to feel stuff because what we feel might be loss. And I think it's okay. It's survival mode. And it's often what's necessary to get through it. But I think what we're missing out is that when we don't attend to those needs, that we're not getting what we need from our interpersonal relationships. And this is where I was highlighting the idea that if somebody asks you these, what do you need? And I throw those words out, so you may be laughing at me. I'm glad I can't hear you guys, because you may be laughing at me right now about how you could ever have those needs met and how you could have time for them. And I think that there's an opportunity now to actually think about it, to look at those needs, see what's been there, and appreciate the needs that have been met, and also see maybe what hasn't been there through this whole process, and what you'd like to now incorporate into your life. And so I figured I'd spend about 45 minutes telling you how difficult and painful all of this can be, and then I figured it was only fair to spend about 30 seconds telling you what to do about it. and I want to share an idea. This is called Ideal Day. And friends of mine in grad school came up with this amazing idea that they created a holiday, which I love in principle, and I think we should create more holidays all the time. And their holiday was called Ideal Day, and they'd announce it once a year, sort of unexpected. And the idea was that everybody was supposed to take off of work, take off from school, and live your ideal day, whatever that is. And it's within, within budget or within reason, but they took it seriously. They didn't let you slack off with, this is, I'd love to go to the beach, but I think there's some sand over there, I'll play with that. They didn't let that happen. They made you figure out how you could get to the beach. And I think I've adopted this and used this with students and with clients, and I'm sharing it with you all because I don't think we stop to think about it. And so I'll ask people what their ideal day is. And a lot of what I hear is, I'd love to go to the beach and sit by myself and have nobody bother me. And I've talked to nobody all day. And I asked them, really? I have a friend who just got back from his honeymoon, and he said, we did that. We sat on the beach and didn't talk and didn't deal with any work or anything. And so I did that for about 45 minutes, and then I got bored and got up and started to look for something to do. And so I asked people to be more specific. I get out that schedule that I was showing you all, sort of a daily, like hour-by-hour tracker, and ask people to fill it out. And if they say, I'd like to go to the beach, I say, what beach? Where? Do you have a favorite spot, or do you want to try somewhere you've never been before? East Coast or West Coast? Where would that be? People often will say things like, I'd love to go have lunch with a friend. And I'll ask them, what friend? Give me a name. Or people say, I'll sit for an hour with a book in the middle of the day. I say, what do you want to read? Something you've read before, or you have a title in mind. And I think it highlights the importance of those things. And so I'll encourage you all to do that exercise. And it's harder than you think, but it's fun. And it highlights sort of, oh, I didn't realize that this person is a part of my ideal day. Why haven't I talked to them in months? Or I didn't realize that it's funny that that's the book I thought of reading on my ideal day. I didn't realize that I like those types of books so much. It highlights to you, I think, what's really important in your life. And I think that, as I've done it with a couple people, I think common themes come out. I did it with a whole group of people from all different backgrounds at one point. And the themes that they shared, two themes of how most of their ideal day was spent. It was outside, and it was with other people. And so I guess my questions to you all that I'm leaving you with is kind of, who are the people that are a part of your ideal day, and are they in your life as much as you want them to be? What are the things that you're passionate about, whether they're hobbies that maybe you've put aside for a while, or whether they're sort of crusades, volunteer work, causes that you really believe in but haven't had enough time to devote to them. Are you blown away by the idea of scheduling 4 hours in your ideal day to spend with a partner or a spouse or a friend? or another child or things like that, that suddenly those 4 hours may be available. I don't want to overestimate how much free time people have when they drop their kids off. I know everybody's lives are incredibly busy, and that time fills up quickly. But I think where it was maybe completely impossible to live an ideal day before, maybe it's slightly possible now. And so I'll take you. I have the blank one on here. I did have my wife fill out one as a sample to share with you guys, but it included a lot of, well, my husband leaves for the day and doesn't come back, or my husband goes to the gym and puts on 10 pounds of muscle and comes. I was like, okay, I see where this is going. Thanks for the help.
Jeff, I know when you told me about this exercise, I was like dreaming about what my ideal day was going to be. It brought a lot of daydreaming into my life for a little bit of time. It was amazing.
That's cool. I appreciate it. I think it's fun. I think people get excited thinking about it.
Absolutely.
And I think it can be more helpful than sort of asking somebody, oh, what are you passionate about? I think inspires a lot of blank looks. Similar to that who are you question. And I think this type of activity can sort of take advantage of everybody's structure and organization, and that everything that's made you such a successful parent to get your child off to school, and sort of use that to find out a little bit more about yourself. And so I want to share with you in something I was reading. I came along this passage, and it comes from a mom who's talking about taking a couple minutes to herself. And I think the part that I focus on is right at the end where it says, I came to realize that a little selfishness is not a bad thing. If I could enjoy myself more, I could enjoy my children more. And I think it's okay to think about yourselves. And it's not only okay, it's necessary. You know, when you get on an airplane, they tell you in the case of an emergency, put on your oxygen mask first, and then put on your child's. And that's an idea that we come back to a lot of, if you're in such a frantic, overwhelmed emergency survival kind of state, there's not much left to give. And so it's okay to take a step away from your child because it makes you that much more excited to take a step back toward them. It's okay to engage in a new hobby or re-engage in an old hobby because it gives you such a great story to tell your child when they come home for dinner over their next break. And I think that this is not only about finding meaning as an individual, but I think it's also about rediscovering some of the fun parts of your relationship with your child too, and even being the best parent you can be.
That's a great example, Jeff, of the oxygen mask, because the first time I stepped onto a plane as a parent, when I heard that statement, I rolled my eyes and said, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And my husband said, well, you do realize there's a reason. It's because you can't help Jackson unless you help yourself first. And that logic is silly to me because it's emotion, and I need to help my son first. But he's right, and I can only be an effective parent and care provider if I help myself before him. And so that's such a perfect analogy. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks. And I think I'm going to open up to take any questions that there might be. I guess I'm just acknowledging that I'm very aware of not wanting to criticize parenting, not wanting to be one of those people that I was referencing that's trying to pretend like they know what it's like to be a parent of one of our children or of anybody else's child, because it's so different for everybody. I think one of the things that that I'm hoping to do by continuing these discussions and getting feedback on them is to bridge that gap between me and CLE and our staff and Amy and the parents, and be on the same team and be understanding each other, and so that we can collaborate and come up with the best things for your children, and we can, you know, help you out in those moments of crisis. And I like the idea of being able to not only just serve students, but serve families and serve everybody through this huge transition time. So
Yeah.
Please let me know if I missed things, and I'm happy to learn from them.
That's a great point, Jeff. We're always learning from parents, and so it's like perfect to get this feedback now. You know, what else can we be doing for you? And actually, we did get a question that's kind of in line with that, and the parent said, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to a parent who's transitioning their son or daughter to another environment? I know what my piece of advice would be. Jeff, do you want to take it first, or do you want me to go?
Go ahead, and then I'll.
Okay, you can fill it in.
Well, yeah.
I honestly, it's the single most easy thing in theory, but it's to find your new hobby and find something. This blends a little bit into what you were saying, Jeff, which is find your ideal day. And so just find your hobby that you want to pursue. I know that I'm trying to find hobbies, and sometimes you scrap one because it's no good and it's not as meaningful as you thought it would be. You know, I tried to teach myself Italian, and that worked for 3 weeks, but I just didn't really have it in me. So find your time to find a hobby, because you potentially do have some gaps from all the energy that you poured into supporting your son or daughter. And it would be so great to find something that's really all about you and for you, so that you can fill in that time, because I do think our parents do go home after they've left their son or daughter at their new apartment and kind of search for what they're going to do and how they're going to spend their time, or how they're going to fill some of those voids that they might be feeling. And that's kind of the culmination of so much of what Jeff said, is find something for yourself. Recognize that if you don't have something to fill in your time, you might worry more about your son or daughter, and not take the time to step back and celebrate that they are doing something absolutely amazing, and maybe something you didn't even think that they were going to do. But that's the common thing that we hear from parents, is like, I can't believe that they're doing blank. And so whether it's that they went and rock climbed and you never thought that they were going to be physically active, or they got an A on a paper in college, that they withdrew money from the ATM all by themselves. It could be anything. So find a hobby to fill that time is something that I would say.
Yeah, I think I actually give one piece of advice to parents at the end of orientation when they're dropping their kids off. I tell them, take a vacation. And they all laugh at me, of course. They say that's ridiculous. I actually had one parent a couple weeks ago who student started with us in August, just called me out of the blue and said, I did it, we're taking a vacation next week, you'd be so proud of me.
That's awesome.
I think there are a couple of reasons for it, and it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I do say take an actual vacation, but I also say take a vacation from all this, even if it's a weekend or even if it's one day. I think for a couple of reasons. One, it's that it sort of forces you to step back for a second. If you can take a literal vacation and shut off the phone for a couple of days, it sort of forces you to trust other people. And I think, you know, that experience, trusting people for a couple of days and then coming back and turning the phone back on and seeing that everything's okay, I think is huge from that point on. I also think that it's an opportunity to celebrate. That's sort of the second part of it. Take a vacation because you earned it. you've done an amazing job as parents, and you've gotten your child to a place where you always wanted them to be, and where maybe people said they couldn't get, and you're sending them off to college. This is, I don't know if you got recognition the whole way, but you deserve it. And so it's time to pat yourself on the back, I think, and reward yourself for a couple of days, and celebrate. I think it's so easy. Even the way I presented it today, it's portrayed as a loss, but I think it's also a celebration.
Very cool. Well, I don't see any other questions that have come up, but Jeff, thank you so much for bringing this topic up. And we're actually hoping to continue providing some hangouts on this topic. We're going to be kind of building on this concept and finding some different ways to do it, and bringing in some, hopefully bringing in some parents to join in the future to share some advice as well. So thank you so much, and if we can help you at all in any way, or you have follow-up questions for Dr. Jeff, his email is jcrow@experiencecle.com. And you can call us at 800-486-5058 or email us at info@experiencecle.com. So thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.